What was that noise?
Right, let's go.
Hello, Johnny from Eurogamer here, and this is A Plague Tale Innocence. I've been playing quite a bit of Focus Home interactive, skittering, stealthy France 'em up this week, and I'll be honest, it's hit me like a ton of bricks. If you've never heard of it before, here's the deal. A Plague Tale Innocence tells the story of young woman Amicia and her little brother Hugo as they pick their way through a version of medieval France torn apart by war, plague, and a ravenous pack of rats. The soldiers of the Inquisition seem to believe Hugo, who suffers from a mysterious affliction, is somehow the key to getting rid of the plague, and so they're trying to hunt the siblings down. So begins a game filled with stealth puzzles, slings, and swarms of rodents. As you can imagine, it's all quite weighty stuff, and A Plague Tale certainly doesn't hold back in terms of bringing the reality of the situation crashing down about your ears. To be more precise, it's absolutely ruthless. To show you what I mean, here are 7 ways A Plague Tale Innocence hits brutally hard. Spoilers for the first hour or so of the game, so if you want to go in completely cold, you'd better look away now. The first way A Plague Tale Innocence hits brutally hard is by killing your dog. No, really. The game opens with Amicia out in the woods with her father and her loyal dog Leon. The very first thing you can do on gaining control of the character, in fact, is to give said pooch a loving pet.
Oh, please, Father. I've trained hard for this.
All right, let's go.
Pretty soon Leon catches the scent of a wild boar and a hunt begins, only for both the dog and your quarry to disappear in the forest. With a mounting sense of foreboding, Amicia goes looking for Leon, stumbling across the corpse of the boar in a truly dreadful state. Further along the track, she finds Leon in a similarly bad way and, well, this happens.
My dog. Who did this? Leon!
Dragged into a hole, presumably by rats, while you pet his bloodied muzzle and try to comfort him. Genuinely harrowing. And the worst part is, that's just foreshadowing. As sad as Leon's demise is, and I think we can all agree it's pretty bloody horrible, it's just the first in a long line of losses Amicia is to suffer before the day is out. After the incident in the woods, Amicia returns home. She's quite understandably upset, and she's also filled with the sense that worse is somehow on the way. At this point, however, everyone else is continuing as normal, chatting among themselves as they work and generally enjoying the atmosphere of a bright, sunny day and a well-run household. Even while Amicia's responses barely manage to contain her rising panic, you get a really clear sense of a stable, happy home. And then all of that is torn away. As the Inquisition arrives, looking for Amicia's little brother Hugo, they systematically dismantle everything that made her house a home, starting by killing her father. The house is ransacked and, as Amicia and Hugo try to escape with their mother, you see pretty much every member of the household get roughly interrogated and then murdered. It's as ruthless as it is meticulous, and the impressive thing about it, if impressive is the right word, is how much it makes you care. You get to spend such a brief time in Amicia's childhood home before the illusion is completely shattered, and yet it still feels like an impactful loss. When you have a matter of minutes to play with, making characters care about a character and everything they have to lose is not an easy thing to do. The Last of Us is an example of this kind of thing done extremely well, whereas for my money, seeing Talion lose his wife and son at the start of Shadow of Mordor was a bit of a damp squib. For my money though, A Plague Tale Innocence handles it really nicely. One of the reasons it manages the effect so capably, of course, is the next way in which it hits quite so hard, which is to say, it makes you watch. A Plague Tale Innocence doesn't pull any of its punches. Amicia quite literally witnesses the deaths of both of her parents, alongside everyone who helped make her home a healthy and happy environment to grow up in. During her journey, she sees people being persecuted by the Inquisition, even burned at the stake. She sees people being devoured by rats, corpses of those who have already met such a terrible fate, and she sees more than her fair share of people trying to murder her and her brother. All of these terrible things are extremely up close and personal, making A Plague Tale into a proper onslaught. And what's more, there's something about this being primarily a stealth game that makes it that much more intense. Because you're in control of the character, but you need to stay hidden, A Plague Tale leaves you free to move around these terrible events, but often unable to look away. It makes you an active participant in watching. In other words, it makes you more than a witness, it makes you a voyeur. Even as she shields her own brother's eyes from having to see the horrors that surround them, Amicia is constantly taking them in, protecting Hugo's innocence, even as hers is steadily eroded. The only thing worse for our teenage protagonist than having to watch all of these horrors, of course, is to become an active participant in them, which, unsurprisingly, is the next reason A Plague Tale Innocence hits brutally hard. During a breathless chase through a village, Amicia and Hugo get split up after the ladder he's climbing collapses. Racing to catch up with her brother, she finds him being manhandled by one of the locals, convinced he's somehow the source of the local infection, and determined to see him killed. Frightened and desperate to protect Hugo, Amicia loads up her sling and kills the man with a well-placed shot to the head.
No, wait, we just want to leave.
You will leave, yes, and now...
I didn't want to.
Amicia!
Now, being forced to kill a man at the start of a game may not sound like much to someone who's played more than a few. The unwitting killer trope is an extremely common starting point for video game characters, after all. But there's something about the swiftness of this moment, and the stunned, sickening realization immediately after, that really sells it. It's quite refreshing to see a game really take the time to emphasize just how monumental the act of killing another human being really is.
Forgive me for the evil I have just committed. I never...
Amicia, you're really squeezing me.
Sorry.
Amicia recognizes that something taking a matter of seconds has changed her life forever, and even though she goes on to kill more people during the course of the game, it's a reminder of how easily we accept death and the act of killing in games. It's also proof that there is nothing quite like a tiny, confused child to underline how monstrous something you just did truly was. Now, I mentioned that Amicia gets more than one person's blood on her hands during the course of A Plague Tale Innocence, but what I certainly wasn't expecting was to have to fight a man in a full suit of armour, which, given she's only armed with a sling, and has no protective gear on whatsoever, feels more than a little bit unfair. The fight itself isn't actually too difficult. You have to hit a series of rings holding your enemy's armour on in order to expose his head and kill him, but the initial realisation of just how high the odds were stacked against Amicia genuinely made my stomach lurch a little bit. It's a reminder both of her vulnerability and of the cruelty of the world around her. It's almost disdainful in its unfairness, in fact, and it really made me feel just how harsh and unforgiving the world of A Plague Tale actually is. Just two things left on our list of ways A Plague Tale Innocence hits brutally hard, and the next one is the voice acting. Amicia and Hugo do a lot of talking throughout the events of A Plague Tale, whether that be trying to make sense of what's happening around them, or whispering together in order to form a hasty plan to pick their way through the next stealth section. Given all the things they're put through in the game, it's no surprise they also spend a lot of time reacting to the world around them, and the horror they express throughout really helps hammer home just how dire a situation they're in. The voice acting itself is pretty decent too. The compliant Hugo can be a bit wooden, but Amicia has some really quality moments.
It's a monk. The other brother. They're going to have to climb up. I'll have to put the torch down.
No, please!
Calm down. There's a torch holder. We'll still have light.
But then what?
We'll find something.
In the same way Hellblade does, A Plague Tale has a very minimal UI, and therefore it's up to Amicia to share information with you vocally, rather than having it pop up as an on-screen prompt. The fact Amicia makes her plans out loud, and often has to talk herself into attempting a course of action, not only gives you a sense of what you should do next, but also what she's thinking about it and just how scared she is from moment to moment. It sounds fairly obvious, but that extra contact with the characters really helps you form an emotional connection with them. And that exercise in empathy makes for some really uncomfortable moments when they're up against something particularly nasty. It hits extra hard, in other words, because it's working extra hard to make sure you're invested. And finally, the last reason A Plague Tale Innocence hits brutally hard is the rats. Of course it's the rats. As you've almost certainly seen yourself from this video so far, vast swathes of the environment are coated in a writhing, seething mass of rats just waiting for you to step out of the light and get torn to pieces. And your relationship to them throughout the game is really interesting. They block your way, but they also act as a kind of handy indicator of where it is you can go. They'll kill you if you get too close, but they can also be directed towards your enemies and kill them on your behalf. They're antagonists and allies all at once, but more than anything else, they're bloody horrible, and they're responsible for most of the corpses that litter the world around you. They enhance A Plague Tale's sense of brutality just by dint of being there, because, let's face it, it's kinda hard to stay chipper when there are thousands of small animals waiting to pounce at the first sign of weakness and devour you while you're still alive. I actually really like rats in real life, but in this particular instance, they are perfectly awful. And there you have it, 7 ways A Plague Tale Innocence hits brutally hard. Are you intrigued by the ratty, sneaky story game, or not so much? Let us know in the comments. Hopefully you found this video interesting. If you did, there are loads more from Eurogamer for you to watch. Some of those should be on screen now, so do give one of those a click. Do like, subscribe, and hit the bell icon so you don't miss anything else from Eurogamer, but most importantly, thank you very much for watching, and have a lovely day.
Right, we'll pass at the same time.